in Boulder. It's up there. But there was something that took place on the CU campus earlier this week, and it was concerned with there was a CU forum that addressed the recent mutual fund scandals, according to Erica Stutzman's story in the Boulder Daily Camera. And the story starts, I'm sure you probably read it, but it starts out, an executive from Denver-based Janus Capital Group, one of the many mutual funds, embroiled in scandal. I love that. Oh no! All right, embroiled in scandal, said Tuesday night that his firm is working to restore the faith in the industry. Now, meanwhile, Morgan Stanley has paid $50 million in a legal settlement. Anyway, joining us to help sort some of this out is Robert Kolb. He is a professor of finance and assistant dean for business and society at the University of Colorado, the Leeds School of Business. Hi, welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming by and joining us tonight. You had a background in TV. You worked in TV before, huh?
Right. I worked my way through college at public TV stations.
Is that right? No, probably not unsimilar to this joint.
It was different. It was
different.
In an earlier technology.
All right. So you're, what is this, a professor, I love this, okay, professor of finance and assistant dean for business and society. What is that, society part?
Well, we have a major initiative at the Leeds School. Our business and society program really is forming one of the key elements of the things that we do at the school. For instance, all business undergraduates take 2 classes in business and society. All MBA students take a full course as well. So this is a very integral part of our curriculum in which we explore all the dimensions of the way that business fits into society.
What's happened here? I mean, we've been reading the story. Here's Invesco accused of fraud. We have Janus Fund also in the middle of this scandal. Let's help us sort this out. Where do we need to start here in Boulder to understand what's taking place?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is it's much more far-reaching than these 2 Colorado firms.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe they're not really all that central to a scandal that is continuing to unfold. But perhaps the best place to start is to remind ourselves of what mutual funds do or what they're supposed to do when they're functioning correctly.
Right. Well, okay, fire away.
Well, essentially, they provide a range of investment services for individuals. That's sort of their primary function. They perform a safekeeping of funds, sort of like a bank, but they also provide an investment vehicle for small investors. And they provide a way for small investors to get a lot of the benefits that are usually available only to large investors by pooling the money into a mutual fund.
Yeah, we all have mutual funds. I mean, I have mutual funds. Everybody, in the 90s, we've been the mutual fund society. Don't buy stocks; they're too risky. Buy mutual funds. You hedge your bets, and therefore they're not as radical, and you certainly won't be swindled by the fund managers.
Well, mutual funds often really do hold stocks. It's a different way of holding stocks in large part. But of course, mutual funds also hold bonds. They hold foreign stocks. They can basically hold any kind of security that one can think of.
So what happened here? I mean, what is it? Because we were talking earlier, and you were saying, well, I mean, I'm saying give us an education here. But what happened? I mean, how did we end up with these? How did we end up with these scandals and fraud? What happened with these guys? Was we trust our mutual fund manager. I call my stockbroker, and he says, "Oh, buy a mutual fund; it'll be much safer for you."
Well, in many respects, mutual funds are safer in that they provide more or less automatic diversification.
Right.
So when you buy, say, a stock mutual fund, as opposed to buying one stock, you just necessarily have a lower level of risk because you're diversified. But what's really gone wrong in the scandal is that some mutual funds, and again, it's only some, have betrayed the trust that's been reposed in them. When you invest in a mutual fund, you're really undertaking a relationship in which the mutual fund has a fiduciary duty to you.
Fiduciary means?
Whether to act on your behalf. They make certain promises to behave in certain ways. Some of those promises are very explicit and spelled out in black and white. Others are somewhat implicit in the sense that they're sort of expected in the ordinary conduct of business.
And fiduciary also would mean they're legally bound to do this too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what happened?
Okay. Inherent in the very nature of a mutual fund is the potential for problem. And the things that have received the most attention thus far are market timing and late trading. They're somewhat related, but also distinct. Market timing refers to frequent trading, where some investors trade in and out of mutual funds.
Right.
Let's take a real simple example. Let's say that you and I are the only two investors in the mutual fund, and you just put your money in and leave it there.
Right.
I, for my part, trade in and out 5 times, 10 times, 20 times every day.
Wow.
If I were to do that, that generates a lot of transaction cost, because as I change my investment in and out, the mutual fund manager has to cash out stocks to repay me when I want to withdraw funds, or he has to buy stocks to take care of the investment that I'm putting in. So what's happening, my activity is driving up the transaction costs for the mutual fund, and for you, it's driving down your returns. So I'm driving up the cost, you're just sitting there passively, but you're going to bear a lot of the cost of this. Now, this is a well-known problem or potential problem in mutual funds. And most mutual funds, or at least many mutual funds, have rules restricting the frequency of trading, and just for that very reason.
And what are the rules?
Well, they differ from there being no explicit rules to rules that are included in the prospectuses under which the mutual funds are sold.
Well, what would be a commonsensical rule, or one that people would think would be the rule?
Right, well, a very typical rule is that you can only have 4 round trips a year. So that the rule is intended to avoid the frequent trading that I just described.
Right.
Now, a number of mutual funds have that kind of rule, not all of them by any means. But one of the problems that has arisen is that some funds with those kind of rules allowed certain favored investors to far exceed that frequency of trading. Okay, so the result is for the passive investor that their returns are being reduced by the frequent trading of these other investors. And it gets a little worse in some cases. In some cases, the mutual funds gave permission to certain traders to engage in frequent trading in exchange for various forms of compensation.
In this is this where the fraud is perpetrated and the scandal begins?
That's one kind of fraud. But I think the important thing to understand is that every mutual fund is subject to the possibility of frequent trading, and the question is, how are they going to deal with that? Right? I think that mutual funds have an obligation to create a level playing field for their investors, and so if they just passively do nothing, it's sort of an error of omission rather than commission.
So this was, the claim here then is market timing and and what kind of trading?
It's called late trading.
Oh wow, they were late trading, so that's after the market closes they were trading in order to reap a profit. Man, I'd love to do that. Everybody wants to do that.
Right, well, it'd be wonderful
It's
if you
illegal
could.
as hell, right?
It is illegal.
Yeah.
But again, like market timing or frequent trading, this possibility is inherent in the structure of mutual funds. Let me give you an
It's just like post betting and horse racing.
Well, I think Elliot Spitzer said it's like betting on the horse race after it's over.
Yeah, that's what post betting is. Okay, go ahead.
And that's certainly a compelling analogy.
Watch this. I will make a prediction here. Because you know how they've just started to do videoing all the horse races, and that's how horse racing makes money now. It's a big, big business. I will bet you that somebody will put a loop in some of these races, maybe 5 or 10 or 20 seconds or a minute, and people will start post-betting on races because of the new video regulations that just came in. Watch this. This will be the next thing that happens in finances.
Well, I don't know if finances is the same as horse racing, but that would certainly be interesting if that transpired.
Isn't it?
Hardly.
I mean, here, come on. Cisco is the name of one horse, and IBM is the name of another.
And you infer from that what?
It's just one big bet. The stock prices don't reflect anything to do with the company at all. I mean, look at Cisco. It was $100 a share stock and went all the way down to, what, $8, $6 at one point?
Perhaps lower.
Well, I mean, I kind of tracked it. I mean, it's a horse race, isn't it? I mean, stock funds are the horse race, and then is an individual, each stock is an individual horse, and mutual funds are a stable of horses.
Well, let's just say that analogy is more misleading than enlightening, I think.
Okay. All right, so I'm listening. Look, you're the professor. I am a lowly talk show host. What do I know? No, what about all these people out here that just lost millions? How many people lost millions of dollars?
We're back to mutual funds now?
Yeah, we're definitely, well, horse racing, mutual funds, mutual betting. I mean, yeah, okay, I know,
Well, let me explain what late trading is.
To you, I'm reaching, but to them, I'm not reaching, especially if they've taken the brunt of these illegal transactions.
Well, probably for individual investors, the actual loss is not gigantic in almost every case from this.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
rather more a matter of a small amount being taken from many, many people. The actual percentage consequences for a particular investor are probably not dramatic, but the problems are more systemic in terms of, well, there is fraud, quite a bit of it. The amounts in aggregate are quite large, at least potentially so. But perhaps more importantly, it destroys trust in the whole financial system. It makes people feel like they're not able to get a fair shake by investing in mutual funds, and that has a very destructive consequence for society. When mutual funds are working properly, they serve a very valuable function. And I think that's an important thing not to lose sight of. So the task is to restore order to make mutual funds serve the interest of the broader society.
So are we going to have more federal regulations, or were there federal regulations in place already, but these guys found ways around the regs?
Well, some of the activities are clearly illegal. Others are going to be subject to civil strictures. So a lot of the activity has violated laws already in place. Almost without question, there will be new laws. Whether those new laws will be a total benefit or a net benefit is yet to be seen.
When so you had this conference. Did you put this conference on? Was this your deal? Or?
Yes, in large part. I had help, of course.
So what was the whole purpose of this conference that we read about in the paper? How many people attended this thing anyways?
About 80, I think.
Around 80?
Right.
Okay. But I mean, and it hit the news, it hit the local paper.
Right.
And what were you trying to do with this conference? What was the whole purpose of it?
Well, as you pointed out, almost all working people invest in mutual funds in one way or another. For instance,
all the 401ks?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the university, almost everybody who works there is probably invested in mutual funds, even without knowing it, perhaps.
Right.
So the reason I wanted to put the conference on was, number one, to explain the finances of it. And one of my colleagues, Michael Stetzer, appeared to give that part.
Right.
The second was to talk about the ethical issues that are involved. And third, to give the public an idea about how some of these problems can be corrected, the remediation.
Were there members of the public that attended this? Who attended your conference?
It's hard to identify exactly who was there. There were a number of students, a number of people from campus, and quite a few people from the community. Just speculating, looking at the audience, I think there were quite a few, perhaps retired people who probably, I imagine, have a lot of investment in mutual fund and perhaps were quite concerned about everything.
Regulators charge that some preferred investors and funds made serious cash even as regular investors saw their returns dwindle by the millions. So here is, I mean, in Boulder, of course, of all places, because we have a large group of people that, first, not a large group, but a noisy group of people that, one, hate corporations, they hate money, they hate finances, and whenever dare I say the word, whenever the left can grab the flag and run with it, here is another case in point. These evil, in this case, mutual fund companies and managers did it to the American people again. When will it ever stop? It's the new Enron.
Jann, I can't believe that there are people in Boulder who are as naive as you portray them to be.
Not naive. This is another example of why we should have communism in our finances. Let's have, actually, do the
I find it very difficult to believe that there are people in Boulder who actually hate corporations. You're not telling me that.
No, there are.
And if there are these hypothetical people, I would think that perhaps they have a certain naivete in failing to realize that it is businesses in general and corporations in particular that create the bulk of wealth for society.
This is so. Is this scandal as big as, like, the Enron scandal and the? I mean, it's the same. It's in the same. It's just in the same area, isn't it? Because you have people on the inside of companies on the know, making money on the side while nobody's looking, hoping they don't get caught.
It's unclear what the amounts are going to be. I think this is quite an unfolding scandal, and there will be more companies, I predict, in the coming months to be named. But it's different than Enron.
Okay.
Enron was a single company run amok. And I would say that perhaps this is more serious because it's more systemic. There are many companies involved.
But Enron brought the world, the American, they were in charge of buying and selling energy, and there are folks who blame Enron for, the energy crisis in California and the energy crisis of 2000 and 2001 by manipulating, where, electricity went.
Well, no doubt the effects of what Enron did can be wide-reaching, but so are these effects, and these involve a lot more companies.
Really? But this doesn't involve the companies directly. It only involves the trading. It involves these larger funds.
Well, I say companies, I mean the mutual fund companies, and there are quite a few of them already, and more to come, I'm sure.
Is this going to affect our economy, do you think? Could it?
No, I don't think so, because once again, even though the aggregate amounts may be quite large, the effects on individual investors are probably not large. And most likely, the market's already discounted this scandal in large part because it's already pretty public and the general shape of what's to come is perhaps emerging.
Okay. You came up with this, examples of external consequences. You said this at your conference. Payment of fines. Morgan & Stanley pays $50 million in security exchange settlement. Who did they pay this money to?
I believe they paid that to the federal government.
What are they going to do with it? Send it to Iraq?
Perhaps.
I don't know. What are they going to do with this money?
Perhaps they'll come to the university. I may write them a letter.
That's another corrupt corporation. The government.
I thought you were speaking of the university.
Well, okay, I have no idea. I'm not going to take off on the university today. Loss of funds under management. Putnam loses $30 billion in 3 weeks.
Right.
That's more than Enron lost in their whole debacle.
Well, yeah, the magnitude of losing $30 billion in funds under management. It's not like they lost this money, it went away. It was withdrawn, largely by state pension funds. But the financial implications for Putnam are enormous. A conservative estimate of the revenue that funds derive from management fees per year is 1%. So if you do the arithmetic, that means that they're losing $300 million in annual revenue from these funds that have been withdrawn. Dissolution of firms. Here we go. Security Trust Bank. So they've collapsed. No, they didn't collapse, but they're a national bank regulated by the controller of the currency. Their problems apparently went to the very top of the firm, including the CEO, and the controller of the currency said, "Disband, cease to do business. We're revoking your charter." In the spring, that'll be final, and so they're in the process of dissolution. The banking scandal of the early 1990s and late 80s, Silverado, the best-known one here in Colorado. Of course, President Bush's brother, Neil, was in charge of that. That really brought the recession of the early 1990s about. Will this do the same in the early 2000s? Quite unlikely, I think. You don't think so? Why not? Well, I think we can already see the economic effects, at least in outline from this. And they've been more or less inconsequential in a systemic point of view. During the time that this has come to public attention, the market has risen quite substantially.
Yeah, but so what?
I
The
think-
market rose in 1929.
I think people understand pretty well what's going on with this, and they have
Do
a-
you?
Yeah, I think
don't
so.
think so. This sounds like a nightmare to me.
It certainly isn't positive, but I think it's well understood by finance professionals, and the general magnitude is pretty well perceived.
How do you understand the loss of $30 billion? I don't understand this at all.
Well, again, it's a loss of $30 billion from what I get to manage if I'm
Right.
Putnam.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a loss of $30 billion in the sense of $30 billion having disappeared.
So then here's a real loss to this company, $50 million fine paid to the SEC, which we don't know what they're going to do with. But
Right, well, I'm trying to point out that the loss of funds under management is actually a larger financial consequence than the $50 million fine.
it is a larger consequence. Then if it's a larger consequence, in this economy, aren't we just all sort of whistling in the dark here?
I generally don't make economic prognostications.
All of you guys are the same at CU. We had James Markelson on here. He wouldn't do it either. He's an economics professor.
I don't know him personally, but he sounds like a wise man.
Oh, man, okay. What else do we have here? Some firms and individuals are gone. Some firms have suffered serious and perhaps irreparable damage. Some firms can correct relatively minor deficiencies and move on to restore trust and serve their customers.
Right.
You think?
I wrote it, I think it.
That's good.
Well, it's clear, some firms, Security Trust Bank, are gone.
Yeah.
There'll be no more. Individuals have exited the industry. Some have, quote, resigned. Others have been fired outright. Still others will disappear. But also, some firms have not been touched by this at all. In the case of a number of firms, the transgressions were relatively minor in the scheme of things, perhaps restricted to a few employees in some cases, or to peccadillos rather than truly drastic crimes.
What did you do before you were a professor? You said, did you run like a brokerage firm or something?
No, I've never worked in the finance industry.
What did you do?
I studied philosophy before I studied finance.
Did you have like a philosophy shop or something, or I don't know, bookstore? I have no idea.
No, I worked on a PhD in philosophy.
Okay, well, how'd you get into the financial world then?
Well, I looked for a job in philosophy and decided quickly I would like to eat as well as
So they said, well,
study.
we need a dean of business and society? You're up, Kolb?
No, I went back and I got a PhD in finance. I had a rather long and at least moderately successful finance career.
Okay, so have you worked in finance?
Not directly, no, although I own my own firm that I founded,
What kind of firm was it?
a publishing company.
A publishing company, book publishing.
Right,
So you would, a small business?
absolutely. I was an entrepreneur as well as a professor.
What-
I always, as a professor, I always waited for someone to say, well, when was the last time you met a payroll? But no one ever asked me that.
All right, when was the last time you met a payroll?
Well, at the time, I was hoping for the question, I was going to say, yesterday.
Is that right? So the company's still running?
No, actually, I built the company up and sold it.
Oh, is that, okay, so then, you have some hands-on experience, because you know how the American public just loves professors that have actually never worked in the field they're teaching about.
Right. Well, I was an entrepreneur. I started a company, put my own money at risk in it, and built it up and sold it.
Well, there you go, that's kind of the American cottage industry, I guess.
Right. It's more like a warehouse industry.
Warehouse industry, American entrepreneurialism at its best. Well, do you know these guys? I mean, some of these people, like Pilgrim, Baxter, Strong.
I don't know any of them personally.
You don't know any of them? Probably easier for you to do your job by not knowing them, huh?
Well, they aren't the ones I'd seek out to know at this point.
Strong, just a few years ago, the Strong Fund was touted as, an up-and-comer, very, reliable, good company. I even owned one of their funds. It didn't do anything, so I sold it.
Well, that's really part of the tragedy of all of this. I believe that well-run companies, such as mutual funds, serve a real benefit to society. And someone like Mr. Strong, I gather, founded this company, built it up, gave employment to lots of people, did lots of good things, but more or less ruined his whole career, perhaps his whole life,
He resigned from the firm in disgrace.
in disgrace after he'd built this up.
Unbelievable. How old was this guy?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's one of the things we try to focus on in the Business and Society program, and that is that when you commit these kind of actions, you don't just harm others, but you also harm yourself in the sense of you harm your own character
Yeah.
and diminish yourself as a person.
That's why I like doing a talk show like this. I mean, I'm a public figure. There's at least 35,000 people this week that'll be watching this TV show. I mean, and I have to keep my life squeaky clean.
Like Rush or...
No, I don't take drugs. I stopped doing that back in the 1970s. But yeah, as an example, like not drinking and driving, taking drugs, or doing really stupid things, I mean, honestly, I pay my taxes on time, meeting with the tax person on December 18th, and all that stuff. It's like, if you're a public figure or if you're running a large company, there's more of a mandate, or a professor or a dean, that there is a mandate to walk the talk.
Well, yeah, I think you have a certain responsibility.
Yeah.
And someone like Mr. Strong, as I say, I've never met him, I just know about him from the published reports. Man of considerable wealth, of considerable achievement, who wasn't happy with just being really wealthy and really successful, but had to go that extra step, apparently.
He did it. Did he do it? He went the extra step and just decided to skim a little?
By all reports.
A few million. I mean, what the hell? After you get beyond $1 million, what more do you need?
Apparently he saw things differently.
All right, it's Professor Robert Kolb, Professor of Finance, Assistant Dean of Business and Society at the University of Colorado Leeds School of Business. Thank you. Thanks for coming by. This is
Good, thank you.
I hope you come back and tell your friends. We like to have professors from CU on here. You know why?
No.
Because there's a lot of BS out there, people that don't know what they're talking about start talking about things that they shouldn't be talking about.
I've seen that happen.
A great deal.
Right.
I mean, and left alone here on this TV show, I could just start spewing a whole bunch of nonsense.
Well, let's not let that happen.
No. So more academics to go. Here we have a university with a huge academic population. And, what better forum? Did we get people calling in that were they making comments on what we were talking about?
No, other topics.
Other topics.
We're off the air now, or?
They want to talk about Pitbulls, I know. All right. Well, this is great. I hope you come back. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you.
Grab your microphone there. Okay. Now, there came another story in the paper, which was just today. No, the other day. Here we go. Dog killed 40-year-old woman and terrorized the neighborhood. Authorities pored over state statutes on. Come on up. Yeah, just Kimberly. After those people come right up here, bring them up. Put microphones on them. Hi guys. Let me read the story while you guys are sitting down. So here's the story. Authorities pored over state statutes on Tuesday to determine what charges to file against the owner of 3 pit bulls involved in a deadly rampage. Albert County Undersheriff James Underwood said he expected charges to be filed against Jacqueline McEwen by the end of the week. He would not speculate on what the charges she might face. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion involved. We're going to be fair, blah, blah, blah. The dogs attacked and killed Jennifer Brooke, 40, when she was feeding horses in her barn on Sunday. The dogs also attacked Brooke's ranch partner. I can't pronounce his name. The guy was 24 when he went to check on her, and then mauled a neighbor, Lynn Baker. Baker took cover in the bed of a pickup truck until his 16-year-old son could shoot and wound the dogs. Deputies later destroyed the animals. McEwen is horrified about what happened. Her attorney told the news. Andre did not immediately return after hours telephone calls. She already faces, now the owner of this pit bull faces misdemeanor charge for owning a vicious dog after one of the animals allegedly mauled a neighbor, Diana Nichols, in April. I'm going to read this whole thing because this is important now. She faces up to a year in jail and a fine of $1,000 if convicted. She was fined $165 for animal violations when she lived in a Denver suburb. The citations filed in August of 2002 included not providing a clean, humane environment, breeding dogs without permit, owning unlicensed dogs, owning too many dogs. Her neighbors said she had 5 dogs and at least 1 puppy, seemed oblivious to the terror they created. Charlotte Davis said she saw one of her dogs attack Nichols in April. So here's a dog owner who has pit bulls, and now the pit bull has killed someone and injured some others, and it was continuously attacking other people. And then, of course, we have the story of the 2 women in New York, I think it was, do you remember that? And she had a pit bull. The pit bull got out in the hallway of an apartment and attacked a professional woman who was returning home from work and killed her in the hallway of an apartment. So we have joining us, this is really cool, we have 2 animal control officers who are with us this evening. Evelyn Willis, who is with the Boulder Police Department, right?
Boulder County Sheriff's
Office. Boulder County Sheriff's, excuse me. Okay, and then this is Brad Shear, Animal Control Officer with the City of Boulder.
Correct.
Hi, welcome, glad you're here.
Thanks.
Wow, okay. You read the story, you know what's going on. Who wants to start?
Well, in terms of the story of the 3 dogs in Elbert County, I don't personally have a lot more information about that incident than what was in the paper. The second incident you mentioned of the 2 dogs killing a woman was actually in San Francisco, and those were actually not pit bulls.
That's right. They were not pit bulls.
They were not pit bulls.
What were they?
They were
Or the Presa Canario.
Presa Canarios, which are a type of mastiff.
Oh.
Also a dangerous dog, and possibly more dangerous dog because they're actually larger and stronger than most pit bulls.
Well, oh, really? Yeah. So, what's up with this? I mean, with this, because we keep reading these kind of stories, the people who own these dangerous dogs. I mean, let's talk about maybe this situation, or how about the one in San Francisco? Because these were 2 people that had this dangerous dog, and the neighbor was terrified of it, had complained about it, yet the dog got loose and killed her. You want to? I'll let you go speak to it. I mean, what's up with people that have these sort of animals?
Yeah.
Well, I think your focus is the right focus, is to focus on the people.
Yeah.
That this woman had, and it wasn't 1 pit bull, it was 3 dogs that got out and killed this woman, all in a pack, which makes, when you have larger numbers of dogs, obviously it makes them more dangerous, although individual dogs kill people too. And I think that it's correct to focus on her and her responsibility for having these animals and not taking the precautions that she should have to keep them away from people, or possibly she shouldn't have had them at all. Someone who has a pit bull or has any any dog that is large and strong, it's not just pit bulls. Anyone can take a dog that's strong enough and either train it to be aggressive, or through lack of training, lack of socialization, allow it to become that way.
Yeah, what's really amazing too is we have two animal control officers, one from the county, one from the city. Why did you both decide to come on tonight? I mean, I guess in light of this story, I mean, you think this is this a big issue? Is this a big story? I mean, people and the way they treat their dogs and that raise animals like this, is that?
Well, yeah, it's a big story in that I'm not aware of any situations like this in Colorado in quite a while.
Yeah.
And there were situations in the past, back in Denver, I would say it's probably maybe been 10 years or so ago. But I think we're fortunate here, certainly in Boulder County and Boulder City as well, is that we have not had any incidents like this.
Are pit bulls, so we mentioned the mastiff that the woman had.
Presa Canario.
Presa Canario. Okay, and you said it's a mastiff?
It's a type of mastiff.
Are those dogs legal in Boulder, in the city of Boulder?
There are no breeds of dogs that are illegal in the city of Boulder, no specific breeds.
So you can own anything, you can have a pit bull, I can have a pit bull at my house?
Sure.
Really?
Yep.
Pit mailman comes to the door, knock, knock, package for Mr. Scott. Okay, I mean, that's not funny, but what about in the county?
Oh, there's no laws about specific breeds in the county either. And I think it's important, really not, The focus does need to be more on the owner, as Brad was saying, and not on the dog itself, because I'll tell you, I have known a lot of really nice pit bulls, and you can't say that just because it's a pit bull, it's going to attack.
Okay, so what's happened here? Okay, so pit bulls were, they were trained, I mean, do you guys know the story on pit bulls? I mean, on what time, and they were...
Historically?
Yeah.
Well, they're fighting dogs. They've been bred to fight each other. And they are probably, in my experience, more dangerous to other animals than they are to people. If you think about two pit bulls in a fighting ring, you've got handlers in the ring with these two dogs that are fighting each other. The handlers don't want to be attacked, so they have to be friendly enough with people, so they're not going to attack the people.
They were, according to Boulder Weekly, they were a blood sport dog up until 1835 in Great Britain. In fact, would you hand me that Boulder Weekly story, which is in that box? And then, so they were bred to fight?
There's still illegal dog fights all over the country, which are primarily pit bulls.
Yeah. This is an interesting point, because you said, don't focus on the dogs, focus on the people. But if you have a dog, and okay, and I'll focus on both. But I mean, it does bring. I mean, if you were to have a tiger, and the tigers they just go crazy all by themselves. And our pit bulls, are they that high strung so that they would be dangerous themselves? And should we have a ban on pit bulls in Boulder or in Boulder County, and in any other dogs that have been bred to fight, that even in the best of conditions they could get out of control? Should we have that?
Tough question. I think that's would be an overreaction.
It would be really.
I think the problem with starting to ban breeds of dogs is you can ban pit bulls, and then the people who are responsible and who want large dogs who are going to protect their homes or who they want to breed to be mean, they'll get Rottweilers, and then Dobermans and German Shepherds, and then you're going to start getting into Presa Canarios, Fila Brasileiros, Jindos, all these dogs.
I get it. So the only thing that we're going to have around are going to be
Poodle.
no. I would not own a poodle. What are those nice blonde dogs?
Golden Retriever.
Yeah, there's golden retrievers and Irish setters, things like that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're interested in going.
Well, I mean, in the city of Boulder, their Labrador Retrievers bite more often than any other breed.
Really?
They bite twice as often as the next most common breed, which is
Where's
German
all this
Shepherd.
taking place?
City of Boulder.
Where in the city?
All over the city. I mean, and on sidewalks and people's
Golden
homes.
retrievers by people?
Labrador Retrievers.
Labrador retrievers.
Yeah. They make up about 19% of the city's bites.
Really?
And the next closest breed is German Shepherds, and they're about 8.5%.
Yikes, German Shepherds are scary. I never did like them. I got bit by one of those when I was little. But what did you do to that dog to make it bite you? Okay, I was like fooling around with it. That's all I can read here. I can read your mind. I know two dog lovers when I see them. Hey, you're sitting with a cat lover. I have no use for dogs. How many times have you been called out on a cat bite?
Actually, we do get cat bites.
You have not. Once back in 1987. Go ahead.
But it's not as...
I went to deliver the mail and the cat came out and bit me. Have you actually had a call?
Not that kind of a... Actually, no, I did have a situation where a cat bit someone in an aggressive manner, but that's just been once. In general, cat bites, in fact, a lot of the bites we take, and I wanted to... Brad and I were talking about this earlier today, is that the Labrador Retrievers have been responsible for more dog bites in the city of Boulder. Well, one reason for that is that there are more of them, is the one thing. And also to distinguish that these are bites as opposed to, and that might include more serious bites, but in the state, and the county, I think in the city too, we define a bite as any break of the skin. So, and that's for the purposes of the health department.
Let's go to the phones. I think we have Kim on the phone, has a comment or a question. Kim, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
I'd just like to say that I have a pit bull of my own, and he's the most loyal, loving dog I've ever had in my life. And I've had a Labrador who actually bit 3 people, and the pit bull has never bit anyone. And he I have nephews that are young, and they'll pull toys out of his mouth, food. He won't bite.
What did you do to that lab to make him bite somebody?
Actually, he was a police dog.
The Labrador?
And when we were little,
Yeah.
my uncles would pick us up and throw us around, and my dog bit him. But my pit bull is very loving, very loyal.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Well, my neighbor had a pit bull when I lived in Lyons, and the first time I ever met him, it scared me to death. I was working under my car, and the pit bull came over and was thirsty. We started drinking out of the garden hose that happened to be running. I was flushing out the radiator and petted him, and we were the best of friends. But you read stories like this, it just scares you to
He
death.
is intimidating, and when I'm walking at night or alone,
Yeah.
so people will actually cross the street when I'm with
Oh,
him.
man, I guess so.
And I think people who have pit bulls, who have German Shepherds and Chows and Dobermans, have a little bit more responsibility and have to understand that people are going to be afraid of your dog, and you have to be cognizant of that. So when we get called, when a Rottweiler steps foot on the sidewalk, we get a dozen phone calls. A poodle could run loose all over town all day, and nobody bothers. But the people who have these dogs, even if they're friendly, have to understand that what their dog does represents this whole breed. They've already got a bad reputation, and if your dog does something, it just heightens the fear that people already have.
Thanks for your call there, Kim.
I have one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it true that it's, the people that raise their dogs to be this way? They're the ones that should have the reputation, not the dog. I just feel really bad for them.
Go ahead. Well, thanks for your call. We'll let you address that.
Well, yeah, I do. I think the responsibility lies with the owner. It's I'd say 90% of what we're doing is we're dealing with the owner of the animals more than the animals themselves. So.
Yeah. What's with these owners? What happens here? Do they beat the dogs, abuse them, make them fight, train them to fight? What makes these dogs mean and vicious?
Well, there are specific training methods for training fighting dogs. Now, again, I don't know any more about the story than these particular dogs than what's been in the news. So I don't know if there was a history of fighting these dogs or not. I haven't heard anything about that.
I don't know of
Yeah.
any history like that, and I think there are certainly people who do that, who train their dogs specifically to be guard dogs or
Didn't you
protection
guys
dogs.
just bust a dog fighting situation over in Lafayette not too long ago? How long ago was that?
I'm not aware of anything
You're
like
not-
that.
you're not aware of
In
it?
the city of Lafayette,
Or in that area? Was that? I mean, well, I know there's people that fight dogs. I mean, I remember when Wendy Bergen did the whole on Channel 4. Remember that whole thing when she went to the dog fights and then she actually arranged one and that cost her career. But I know Animal Planet. If you look at it, you watch Animal Planet, it always shows animal. What do we call animal enforcement officers? No?
Yeah, those are you're thinking of Animal Precinct, the
Yeah.
show on Animal Planet,
Yeah.
and
The humane investigators.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's always kind of cool because they're always out. They're always looking at what people. Of course, there are a lot of people that really abuse dogs. They just leave them alone or don't feed them or don't pay any attention to them. But I'm not convinced here that it's the owner. There's something, it's like, okay, are you allowed to have large cats in Boulder? That is, like tigers, lions, any of those kind of
Well,
animals?
the state regulates
State
exotic cats, so the state could license a wild animal park, for example, and there are,
In the city of Boulder?
the city of Boulder does not allow them, but I think the county
I think the county does have some exotic animals, yes.
Sure, over in Lyons. Didn't that guy have the tigers and lions for a while? Is he still over
Yeah,
there?
he actually has moved to another part of the county.
He moved to another part? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, see, I'm still not convinced.
That it's the owner. Well,
No.
yeah, and again, ultimately, I believe the responsibility always comes back to the owner because this owner did not keep these dogs confined, and had they been confined, this wouldn't have happened.
Aha, okay. Oh, yeah, because, the story goes on where the dogs they come out at night and it's almost like hounds of the Baskerville staring in the windows and pounding on the...
And it sounds like, from the reports, and I don't know this for a fact, but it sounds like from what I've read in the paper that this wasn't the first time the dogs were out. She was aware that somehow the dogs were getting loose.
You're trained, you're trained law enforcement officers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, but we're
Yeah.
not at the same level as an actual police officer or deputy.
Okay, but what are you seeing in terms of people abusing animals or abusing these kind of animals or any animals to where they turn mean? I mean, what's your average day like on your job?
Well, I'd say a case like this is not an average day, but certainly we get a large number of bites. In the city, we get usually 140, 150 bites a year. So every few days, we're going to have a dog bite reported, and there's some investigation that certainly goes into that. In the city, we're also patrolling for dogs at large.
What about dogs on trails? You always hear these nightmare stories. Fido's always going on about, oh, dogs are wonderful and they're lovely. And then you hear all these other people like, oh my God, I hiked up Mount Sanitas and the dog came out of nowhere and attacked my dog and attacked me. I mean, what's up with that?
Well, we don't actually patrol on the trails. It's the city and county open space rangers do all the enforcement on the trails. I certainly hear from some of those people that have those problems, and I think it's the people who don't understand their dog's behavior and how that dog's behavior is affecting other people. Right. And some people aren't concerned about a bite. Maybe they just don't want the dog approaching them. They just don't want a dog running up to them on the trail, and it might not just be a fear of a bite.
Yeah.
It might be, I just want to walk down the trail without dogs jumping up on me or getting in my way.
What's your day like? Where do you patrol?
All of unincorporated Boulder County, which is about 750 square miles, and also we have, how many bites did you say you have? About 140?
150.
We checked in, as far as, we had about 80 dog bites this year. Well, actually, not combination dog and cat bites, and I'm thinking about 2/3 of those was probably, 2/3 to 3/4 would be dog
You said
bites.
dog and cat bites. You're
Yeah.
serious? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but see, a lot of the cat, I did get away from the cat bites.
Yeah.
So we have to take a report whenever a person's skin is broken by the tooth of a dog or a cat. And so, say at the Humane Society in Longmont, they have someone who's cleaning the kennel, and the cat gets frightened and bites them. We have to take a report. So that goes in our statistics as well.
This is the time of the year when people, and I don't know even know if we need to address this or not, but maybe we could. It's Christmas, this time of the year when people buy animals. You have any suggestions in this area?
Yeah, well, Brad can address this really well because I know with the Humane Society they work with that a lot. But let me just say, I mean, I personally, and from my experience personally, an animal control officer, is that in general it's not a good idea to buy a pet as a surprise for someone. And
Not a good idea.
Not
So
a
don't
good
get a
idea.
puppy, put it under the Christmas tree.
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because it's a minimum of a 10-year commitment. A minimum of a 10-year commitment when you're buying an animal, and usually longer than that. I mean, they can live to be 16, 20 years old. And so, and I would like Brad to address that because the Humane Society has a really proactive position on that.
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, I agree that that usually an animal is not a good surprise gift for someone. I think the holidays are a fine time to buy an animal, but you have to think about what your life is like during that time. Some people's lives are a lot more hectic, a lot more difficult. This is the right time to get this new enormous responsibility into the house. And whether that animal comes from a shelter or a pet store or a breeder or a friend, it's going to take some time to adjust to the house. And when you're during the holidays, which can be a difficult time for people anyway, it can be hard to fit that animal in. If you're prepared, I think it could be great if you're ready for the responsibility and you're really thinking, well, we're buying it at Christmas, but we're ready for 10 or 15 years with this animal, then that's
really
great.
because I never thought about that. You know, I mean, I've been thinking about getting a pet myself, and people say, well, you should get a pet now, you have a house and everything. I'm like, well, I have to really think about this, and what I've been thinking about, and I haven't really, just defined it the way you defined it, but it's a 10-year commitment or longer, and it's like having it, it's a member of the family, almost like a kid, really, truly. And so I'm really being very thoughtful about before I do get a pet. Look, don't go away, stay here, would you? Because we have on the phone with us Justin Dombrowski's with his Wildland Fire Management Officer, Boulder Fire Department. Big picture in the paper here the other day, small 4-acre wildland fire broke out. I got an email from you, Justin, the other day saying that the even though it's December, the fire danger is as high or higher than it was in October and November. Is that really true?
Well, what we found ourselves with is basically a drying trend where we've had very little moisture on the ground. What we're looking at for this fall versus maybe like a comparison of last fall is that we had a lot of moisture this spring, this summer, that allowed the vegetation, the fine fuels, the grasses to grow up tall and dense. And then we've had this very long dry spell with very little moisture, a little bit of snow here, a little bit of ice there, and that's about it. And so basically we have some thick vegetation on the ground that's dry and ready to go anytime we have a hot day or these high Chinook, high warm winds called Chinook winds that we've already seen. That was part of the problem of the Overland fire that we had just a couple, in October.
Also, incidentally, you're on with Evelyn Willis and Brad Shear, animal control officers. Do you know these guys? You should.
I think we've seen each other and encountered each other on calls. We actually had
Were you two involved with this, with the fire that we recently had, getting animals, horses, and that sort of thing out of there?
I wasn't working that day, but my partners were,
Yeah.
and they were involved in Humane Society.
Right, county animal control mainly was evacuating horses. I know they evacuated some cattle and goats and llamas, and we were mainly working with evacuating and sheltering the smaller animals, dogs and cats.
Did we lose any animals up there, Justin? During the
Well, on the grass fire, no, but it doesn't happen to just be a wildland fire that we have a concern with. We did have a house fire on 17th and Pine just a couple of weeks ago, and there was one cat that perished in the fire, but the firefighters and the paramedics actually were able to bring one cat back to life, essentially by giving it CPR and oxygen, and then a couple other cats missing. So on some of these grass fires and some of these wildfires, especially grass fires, they move so fast, there isn't really time. You think about getting animals out of the way, you just hope they can figure it out on their own, which usually they can, especially the small animals.
Oh, the big fire that we had up in Jamestown, I mean, I know our neighbors had horses, and they moved their horses out to Longmont, to the fairgrounds, because the fire burned right through where the horses were.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot more that it has the potential for it to hit with. I mean, the fire took a 6-mile run in an afternoon, and so if the weather didn't shift and it kept on moving, it easily could have crossed US 36 highway. It could have threatened areas around the town of Lyons, which was only a few miles away from where the fire was stopped.
Were you on that fire, Justin?
Oh yeah, I was a safety officer on that fire, so part of my concerns were not only the safety of the firefighters, but also the safety of the public and the safety of the animals.
Why didn't, there was a lot of questions asked. We got some questions here on the TV show, and I thought I'd ask you too while we have you here. Why didn't they use the Black Hawk helicopters? I mean, why didn't they let them circle around and dump the water in there when the winds slowed down? Or were they just not able to use them?
Well, we actually we have our own fire helicopter that we brought in and got it to Boulder Airport, but the winds were so high that we could never get it off the ground from Boulder Airport. So really, it's anytime the winds are higher than about 25 miles per hour, you can't use air resources effectively. We also try to get air tankers. We ordered them, but they were stuck in snowstorms in different parts of the country and couldn't get through, and then they were just not going to be usable anyway because of the high winds.
Someone brought up, I had a pilot bring up to me the other day that we ought to have our own C-130 converted air tanker parked out at the Boulder Municipal Airport and keep it there on a permanent basis. There is a reservoir pond right there. What do you think? I mean,
the problem is Boulder Municipal Airport has a short runway, and you couldn't land a C-130 really in that airport. Now, we do have Jefferson County Airport just over the hill.
Wait a minute. We used to take off and land B-24s during World War II at that airport, and I've been told that C-130s will land and take off on a short runway with a full load.
Well, with the C-130s, the non-military C-130s have actually been permanently grounded because they have been determined unsafe with too many flying hours on them. So that actually, the C-130s is not a plane that would be considered acceptable.
Why does this federal government have contractors that have old, World War II vintage planes then?
Well, I think there is discussion about getting a newer fleet brought in, but you're talking about some very high dollars for that. I mean, we end up spending so much money on aviation anyway.
We have so
But then-
many, look, we have graveyards filled with C-130s, 140s, 150s. Is this a slowdown by the federal government to not make these airplanes available to you guys?
No, I think one of the problems we've had is just the safety issues of the aging fleet.
Really?
And, you know, we use a helicopter in our Boulder area program, this Rocky Mountain helicopter, that's a 1970 helicopter. And, you know, we lost our pilot and our helicopter in a big elk fire. But we're still going to use some of it that's just getting too outdated, that has too many hours on it, just really aren't safe to use anymore. But still, most air tankers you see flying around there, they're not new air tankers, they're all very old equipment.
I know. Hey, just one last thought here. Back on this, the fire danger right now, just how dangerous is it?
Well, it's right now we're at the point where it gets cool, it gets wet in the evening, so we're not really as concerned about fires at night. But during the daytime, it's a hot, dry day, and when we get these 70, 80, 90 mile per hour Chinook winds, then we're worried about a fire that can move just about that fast. And because the grasses now are these tall grasses, not just short grasses, we could be potentially looking at flames that are 30 to 40 feet high just off the grasses. And with those kind of winds on it, you're talking about a fire that may move a football field in 15 seconds.
So people need to be really careful right now?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the time to start letting your guard down and throwing those cigarettes out the window anymore. You still have to be smart with it.
Where are we talking to you from tonight, Justin, anyways?
Actually in Boulder, I just got back.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, hey, listen, thank you so much for taking some time
You bet,
and
thank you.
talking with us. And thank you too, guys. I mean,